Liberated enjoyment of sense pleasure. Noble disciples Arya Sawaka were endowed with liberating wisdom, Nitsaranapanya. They enjoy sensual or material pleasure with a thorough understanding, preserving an inner freedom and avoiding enslavement by material things. They use and consume things by recognizing both their benefits as well as their potential harm. They're able to manage things and manage affairs in a way that leads to the well-being of themselves, their families, their companions, their dependents, their co-workers, their community, and indeed of their entire society. Moreover, they are aware, both in regard to themselves and to others, of how to progress and develop on the noble path Arya Magga. In reference to monks or monastic residents who aim for higher forms of happiness and freedom, the Buddha taught to abandon sensual desire and to pass beyond material things, but in reference to householders, he did not emphasize the abstinence from sensuality. Instead, he emphasized managing the consumption of material things and dwelling in contentment in a way that is safe from ill effects and conducive to the greatest blessings for oneself and others. Of course, liberating wisdom is also a key element for householders or lay people, both in respect to enjoying sense objects, kama bhoga, safely, in a way conducive to benefit and free from affliction, and to guiding one to greater levels of well-being. The Buddha thus emphasized the constant application of such wisdom in the engagement with all things by clearly recognizing three principal factors: the benefits, the dangers, and the escape, or in other words, the advantages, the drawbacks or faults, and the point of deliverance and freedom, which constitutes a state of completion, transcending both the advantages and disadvantages that are still inseparably bound by one another. When teaching lay people who had either no understanding or only a basic understanding of the Buddhist teachings and who did not yet aspire to renounce the household life, the Buddha usually began with basic levels of practice, followed by more refined levels. This teaching by the Buddha is called the progressive instruction, or gradual instruction, Anupubikata. The gradual instruction is comprised of 5 factors, 3 expositions, kata, and 2 related subjects. The 3 expositions are as follows. 1. Dana kata, exposition on giving, renunciation, charity, and generosity. 2. Sila kata, exposition on moral conduct, on refraining from exploitation of others, and on refraining from causing social conflict and enmity. 3. Saga kata, exposition on heaven, i.e. a virtuous, wholesome life, which is endowed with happiness derived from sense objects, kamavatu. This exposition highlights those individuals, including celestial beings, who live an upright life and enjoy various levels of sense pleasure. This third factor is the result of generosity and moral conduct. It points to a sense of responsibility in creating a wholesome life in society and to experiencing a healthy form of sensual happiness. This gradual teaching introduced those lay people in the audience to the highest goal that they were struggling to find. They were able to recognize that when one lives one's life in accord with the first two principles of generosity and virtuous conduct, one will experience a faultless form of happiness and enjoy abundant sense pleasures, as described in the third factor, and one thus achieves one's wishes. If the listener was prepared, the Buddha would then continue by describing the disadvantages of sense pleasures, kama di nawa. He would explain that, however great the pleasure dependent on material objects may be, it still has a drawback or deficiency, paving the way to suffering and loss. When the listener understood this fourth factor well and wished for a way out, the Buddha would describe the benefits of renouncing sense pleasures, ne kama ni samsa. He would point out a life of freedom, of independence from material things, and of unconstrained happiness, which becomes a constant inner quality. The listener would then become receptive and aspire to reach a happiness independent of objects of sensuality. Niramisa Sukha. This was how the Buddha would develop a receptivity and readiness in people. He would prepare their minds gradually in a way epitomized by the expression of old, cleansing and purifying a person's disposition. The Tipitaka states that when the Buddha knew that the minds of his listeners were receptive, malleable, unclouded, joyous and bright, similar to a spotless cloth ready to receive dye, he would teach the Four Noble Truths. When their minds were open, he would impart wisdom, enabling them to arrive at the truth, Satchidhamma, to be a personal witness to truth, until there arose the eye of Dhamma, Dhammachaku, and they would enter the community of the noble ones, Ariya Pugala, from stream enterers upwards. Most of these awakened individuals with the eye of Dhamma continue to live as householders. They still enjoy sensuality, but it is a sensual happiness integrated with the happiness independent of material things, Niramisa Sukha, which acts as a guarantee, preventing sensuality from causing harm, and indeed generating blessings and virtue. These noble beings act as pillars and exemplars, exercising authority in their communities, and they advance without fail, without decline on the noble path. In some, however delicious, sparkling, refreshing, remarkable, or desirable sense pleasure, Kamasukha, or material happiness, Samisa Sukha, may be, it still depends on external objects. It is not yet free and independent. It still involves some form of personal attachment and possession. Furthermore, in the insatiable search for sense gratification, other people are bent on pursuing the same objects of pleasure, of which the finest and most desirable are of a limited and inadequate number. People vying for these things treat each other with distrust, giving rise to disagreements, conflicts, zealous guarding of possessions and oppression. If people do not know how to control their desires, the suppression intensifies, leading to increased distress and unbounded destruction. Even if one does not even if one does own these material things to one's heart's content, they may disappear. And even if they do not disappear, they may lose their appeal, either by undergoing change themselves or as a result of a change in the individual. In any case, they must eventually decline and disintegrate. They cannot be sustained in that desirable condition forever, and one must be separated from these things in the end. Hand in hand with sense pleasure comes worry and anxiety. Although people may experience sensual happiness to fulfillment, apart from people's innate insatiability causing problems, that happiness itself is neither secure, reliable, nor replete. It is as if one is plagued by an embedded and infected splinter or barb that causes irritation and annoyance. The pleasure is mixed up with suffering. The future is full of fear and anticipation, the past full of sorrow and regrets. It is not a pure, faultless, spacious, and complete form of happiness. Although more refined forms of happiness are internal, independent, pure, and harmless, if one's enjoyment of this happiness is still mixed with mental defilement, one may succumb to indulgence, giving rise to heedlessness and neglect. One's responsibilities and the well-being of one's community will be undermined. Moreover, one may fall back to indulging in material pleasures and forget to put effort into spiritual practice in order to eliminate residual mental impurities, which are the root of suffering. One's practice will thus be faulty and compromised. Therefore, both sensual happiness and happiness independent of material things, experienced by those who still have mental defilements, is not yet truly free or complete, because these people harbour a sense of self that gets caught up with things. They have not yet eradicated the root of suffering. They must engage in spiritual cultivation until they arrive at the destruction of the taints at Sawakaya, the state free from suffering, by which one does not grasp at anything, and nothing sticks to the mind, just as water does not stick to a lotus leaf. A person's body lives in the world, but the mind transcends the world. One passes beyond both suffering and the happiness dependent on sensation, Vedana, including refined sensations generated in the mind, and one reaches supreme happiness, which does not involve feeding on sensation. This happiness is completely satisfying, and it is complete in itself. It can be compared to perfect physical health. Nothing disturbs or irritates the mind. It is clear, calm, pure, bright, and at ease. When one has reached utter and total freedom, and there is no self to get entangled in anything, one is happy in every situation, and nothing remains to be done in respect to personal desires. If one seeks out happiness, this is done for the sake of the world, for the well-being and happiness of all beings. This is the supreme happiness of freedom from suffering. It lies beyond the reach of affliction, and it constitutes the highest goal of every human being. Despite the drawbacks and disadvantages of sense pleasure, it is still one form of happiness which has a bearing on the majority of people, because of its potential for causing suffering, both for individuals and for society. It is very important to guard against and to rectify any harm it creates. In some sense, pleasure must be managed carefully, and people ought to be encouraged to develop themselves in order to experience higher forms of happiness. Skillful management of sense pleasure is a necessary asset at beginning stages of practice. Although sense pleasure contains defects, it can still benefit one's life and help lead to a peaceful coexistence with others. Moreover, it is a basis from which people can develop themselves and discover greater blessings. For this reason, in systematic presentations of happiness, well-managed sense pleasure is classified as a basic benefit atta, which is to be aspired to and reached. It is referred to as a present benefit, dita dhammi kata, a visible, obvious, and immediate benefit. The benefit here refers precisely to the happiness derived from material things. Present benefit, dita dhammi kata, refers to happiness on the material level, rupa dhamma. It is tied up with material things, vatu, with objects of gratification and consumable things. Moreover, it pertains to communal living, to creating wholesome, supportive interpersonal relationships. In sum, this benefit involves diligence in performing one's work and in earning one's living in order to obtain enough material wealth to look after oneself, one's family, and one's dependents so that everyone is at ease. Maintaining wholesome social relationships and communal harmony, having a respectable position in society, in addition to receiving honour and prestige, and having a supportive retinue or staff. Sustaining one's family in comfort, establishing one's family as a respectable model for others and in a way conducive to the well-being of society. Taking care of one's body, for instance, by exercising, ensuring moderation in eating, so that one lives without illness and remains healthy. In regard to more refined happiness, which is internal and independent of material things, nira misa sukha, it too is a benefit and aspiration for life, referred to as samparayikata, future benefit, spiritual benefit, profound benefit, or inconspicuous benefit. In terms of present benefit, the happiness resulting from having abundant consumable goods is obvious for all to see. But in terms of spiritual benefit, helping another person to escape from suffering leads to even greater rejoicing and delight. Similarly, feeling deep moved and inspired by truth and goodness, with an accompanying joy and peace, is a spiritual happiness not clearly visible to others. Moreover, such happiness connected to virtue bears results in future lives, which are also inconspicuous. For these reasons, it is referred to as samparayikata, inconspicuous benefit or future benefit. The meaning of the term samparayikata includes all forms of internal, refined forms of happiness, beginning with the joy derived from faith, sada, from living a virtuous life, sila, from concentration, samadhi, and from jhana, all the way up to the happiness of nibbana, nibbana sukha. For this reason, in most suttas, only two kinds of benefit are mentioned, present benefit and future benefit. This is suitable when teaching people in general. It describes the happiness that they are familiar with in their everyday lives, and it introduces higher forms of happiness in a way that is easy to understand. As mentioned earlier, much of the happiness classified as independent or non-material Niramisa Sukha is not yet complete. It is still subject to reversal and potentially mixed up with attachment and heedlessness. Therefore, in relation to those people who have a good basis of understanding, it is sometimes necessary to make a more detailed distinction. In this case, the true happiness of the extinction of the taints, at Savakaya, the happiness of the Arahants, or the happiness of Nibbana, is distinguished from Samparayikata and given the name Supreme Benefit, Paramatta. In sum, this term Atta, which refers to the purpose or objective of life, can be divided simply into two kinds: visible benefit and inconspicuous, i.e. spiritual benefit, including the supreme benefit. A more detailed division, however, is into three kinds. 1. Visible benefit, Dita Dhammi Kata, emphasizes physical health, material possessions, honor, friendship, and a happy home. 2. Inconspicuous benefit, Samparayikata, emphasizes having a wholesome, refined, and happy mind by way of spiritual development. 3. Supreme benefit, Paramatta, refers to having comprehensive wisdom, leading to true purity, clarity, happiness, and liberation. Besides encouraging people to gradually reach these three kinds of benefit, the Buddha also taught to broaden one's perspective so that one develops these benefits, not only for oneself but also for the sake of others. There is thus a second group of three benefits. 1. Self-benefit, atta, to generate the above three kinds of benefit for oneself, to develop oneself in order to reach these three benefits. 2. Benefit of others, parata, to assist others in reaching the three above benefits by supporting them in spiritual self-development. 3. Mutual benefits, upayata, the shared benefits and assets of a community or society, including the shared environment, which should be nurtured and cared for in order to support oneself and others in reaching the three aforementioned benefits. Due to the importance of how sense pleasure is managed and engaged with, the Buddha gave teachings to householders on spiritual qualities leading to present benefit. For example, on how to deal with material possessions in correct and supportive manner. These teachings are scattered throughout the Tipitaka. When providing teachings on visual benefit, besides emphasizing liberating wisdom, Nisaranapanya, the Buddha also combined teachings on qualities conducive to spiritual benefit, Samparayikata. This is because these qualities accompany refined happiness, act as a guarantee both for preventing sense pleasure from harming oneself and for preventing it from harming others or harming society. Instead, people will be able to apply their enjoyment of sense pleasure to assist others and provide for their well-being. Moreover, these teachings remind people to make the effort in developing more refined forms of happiness. There are various names for the factors conducive to the development by householders in spiritual benefit, including the supreme benefit, which help to regulate people's relationship to sense pleasure. The chief of these terms is Ariyavadi, noble growth. There are 5 such factors. 1. Faith, Sada, firm confidence in the blessings of the Triple Gem, the gist of which lies with faith in the Tathagata's awakening. Tathagata Bodhi Sada, faith in the wisdom of the Buddha, which enables people to be awakened themselves. This is equivalent to confidence in human nature, which can be trained to the point of excellence, of comprehensive wisdom and liberation. This confidence is considered the starting point of spiritual development. 2. Virtuous conduct, Sila, to conduct one's life in a harmless way by upholding the 5 precepts, which may be developed into the 8 precepts. 3. Learning, Sutta, to listen to, reflect on and analyze teachings in order to gain an essential understanding of them, especially those teachings conducive to spiritual growth. 4. Generosity, Kaga, charity, relinquishment, to lead the household life without being miserly, being receptive to the suffering of others and ready to share what one has and to offer assistance. 5. Wisdom, Panya, to gain a comprehensive understanding of the truth, to have insight into arising and dissolution, to extricate oneself from unwholesome qualities, to reach a state where mental defilements find no footing, to be able to bring suffering to cessation. Of these 5 factors, the 4 essential factors are faith, virtuous conduct, generosity, and wisdom. Learning here is considered expedient but optional. Of course, it is favorable to have learning, especially to be one of great learning, Bahu Sutta, but technically this factor is dispensable. Wisdom is the paramount factor. When wisdom is present, there is less reliance on formal learning. By the same token, no matter how much one has learned, if one lacks wisdom, one cannot reach true success. In any case, these 5 factors are considered assets to one's life. Of the various teachings in the Tipitaka on managing sense pleasure, there is one long teaching comprising in the Singalaka Sutta, which describes a system for conducting one's life as a householder in reference to one's immediate family, to one's community, and to society in general. The commentators say that this sutta constitutes a discipline for lay people, Gihi Vinaya, or a code of living for noble beings. At the start of the Singalaka Sutta, the Buddha refers to this code of living as a noble discipline, Arya Vinaya, and at the end of the sutta he speaks a verse describing the principles for building social stability and harmony, which are called the 4 bases of social solidarity, Sangaha Watu. giving gifts, kindly speech, wholesome deeds, and impartiality in all things towards those worthy of such support. One should practice these four things properly. These four things are people's mainstay in the world, similar to the axle pin of a moving chariot. If they did not exist, no mother from her son would receive honour or respect, nor father either. Since the wise uphold these favourable qualities, they attain to a state of distinction and are rightly praised by all. Both the teachings on noble growth and on the four bases of social solidarity pertain to a refined form of essential happiness, which acts as a link between material benefit and spiritual benefit. In shorter teachings by the Buddha, however, material benefit or present benefit, dita dhammi kata, usually refers to material wealth because economic factors are of such central importance to the life of householders, and they incorporate almost all facets of a lay person's life. When looking at only these select suttas, it is thus easy to get the impression that present benefit refers exclusively to material wealth. Below are some additional teachings by the Buddha on present benefit. Some of these emphasize material wealth, while others act as a bridge to realizing spiritual benefit. To begin with, however, let us look at a sutta in which present benefit refers to another aspect of sense pleasure, not tied up with material wealth. Here the emphasis is on attending to one's physical health. The Buddha was residing at Savatthi. On that occasion, King Pasenadi of Kosala had eaten a pot measure of rice with delicacies. Then, when he had finished eating, cramped and discomforted, the king approached the Blessed One and paid homage to him and sat down to one side. Then the Blessed One, having understood that King Pasenadi had eaten and was cramped and discomforted, on that occasion recited this verse: When a man is always mindful, knowing moderation in the food he eats, his ailments duly diminish, he ages slowly and he lives long. Now on that occasion the Brahmin youth Sudarsana was standing behind King Pasenadi of Kosala. The king then addressed him thus: Come now, dear Sudarsana, learn this verse from the Blessed One and recite it to me whenever I am taking my meal. I will then present you daily with 100 kahapanas as a cost for the meal. Yes, sir, the Brahmin youth Sudarsana replied. Having learned this verse from the Blessed One, whenever King Pasenadi was taking his meal, the Brahmin youth Sudarsana recited it. Then King Pasenadi of Kosala gradually restrained himself until his intake of food was at most a small pot measure of boiled rice. At a later time, when his body had become energetic and spry, King Pasenadi of Kosala stroked his limbs with his hand and on that occasion uttered this inspired utterance: The Blessed One showed compassion towards me in regard to both kinds of good, the present good, dita dhammi kata, and the higher good, samparayi kata. The following sutta on present benefit describes a proper engagement with sense pleasure and emphasizes the relationship to material wealth, but it too provides a link to higher spiritual benefit. Note that this sutta was given to the wealthy merchant Anathapindika, who was a stream enterer. Note also that in regard to the first three kinds of happiness below, the term clansman kula puto is used, while in regard to the fourth kind of happiness, the term noble disciple Arya Sawaka is used, indicating a rise to higher spiritual benefit. Then the householder Anathapindika approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, and sat down to one side. The Blessed One said to him, Householder, there are these four kinds of happiness that may be regularly achieved by a layperson who enjoys sensual pleasures. What for? The happiness of owning wealth, Atisukha, the happiness of spending wealth for consumption, Bhogasukha, the happiness of freedom from debt, Ananna Sukha, and the happiness of blameless action, Anavajja Sukha. And what householder is the happiness of ownership? Here a clansman has acquired wealth by energetic striving, amassed by the strength of his arms, earned by the sweat of his brow, righteous wealth righteously gained when he thinks. I have acquired wealth by energetic striving, righteously gained. He experiences happiness and joy. This is called the happiness of ownership. What is the happiness of consumption? Here, with wealth acquired by energetic striving, amassed by the strength of his arms, earned by the sweat of his brow, righteous wealth righteously gained, the clansman enjoys his wealth and does meritorious deeds. When he thinks, with wealth acquired by energetic striving, righteously gained, I enjoy my wealth and do meritorious deeds. He experiences happiness and joy. This is called the happiness of consumption. And what is the happiness of freedom from debt? Here a clansman has no debts to anyone, whether large or small. When he thinks, I have no debts to anyone, whether large or small, he experiences happiness and joy. This is called the happiness of freedom from debt. And what is the happiness of blamelessness? Here, householder, a noble disciple is endowed with blameless bodily, verbal, and mental action. When he thinks, I am endowed with blameless bodily, verbal, and mental action, he experiences happiness and joy. This is called the happiness of blamelessness. Having realized the happiness of freedom from debt, one should recall the happiness of ownership. While spending one's wealth, one sees clearly the happiness of material wealth, Bhogasukha. When seeing things clearly, the wise one knows both kinds of happiness and sees that the other three are not worth a 16th part of the bliss of blamelessness. The following sutta makes a clear distinction between present benefit and spiritual benefit, the latter acting as both a support and a constraint for the former. On one occasion the Blessed One was dwelling among the Kolyans near the Kolyan town named Kakarapata. There the young Kolyan Digajanu approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, Venerable Sir, we are laymen enjoying sensual pleasures, living at home in a house full of children. We use sandalwood from Kasi, we wear garlands, scents and unguents, we welcome gold and silver. Let the Blessed One teach us the Dhamma in a way that will lead to our welfare and happiness in this present life and in the future. There are Bhagya Paja, these four things that lead to the welfare and happiness of a clansman in this present life. What for? Accomplishment in diligence, accomplishment in protection, good friendship and balanced living. What is accomplishment in diligence. Here, whatever may be the means by which a clansman earns his living, whether of farming, trade, raising cattle, military service, government service, or some other craft, he is skilful and diligent. He possesses a sound judgment in order to carry out and arrange it properly. This is called accomplishment in diligence. And what is accomplishment in protection? Here a clansman sets up protection and guard over the wealth he has acquired through perseverance, amassed by the strength of his arms, earned by the sweat of his brow, righteous wealth, righteously gained, thinking, how can I prevent kings from confiscating it, thieves from stealing it, fire from burning it, floods from sweeping it off, and displeasing heirs from squandering it? This is called accomplishment in protection. And what is good friendship? Here, in whatever village or town a clansman lives, he associates with householders or their sons, both young and old, who are of mature conduct, who are endowed with faith, virtuous behaviour, generosity, and wisdom. He converses with them and consults with them. In so far as they are accomplished in faith, he emulates them with respect to their accomplishment in faith. In so far as they are accomplished in virtuous behaviour, he emulates them with respect to their accomplishment in virtuous behaviour. In so far as they are accomplished in generosity, he emulates them with respect to their accomplishment in generosity. In so far as they are accomplished in wisdom, he emulates them with respect to their accomplishment in wisdom. This is called good friendship. And what is balanced living? Here a clansman leads a balanced life, living neither too extravagantly nor too frugally. He knows the way his wealth increases and declines, aware, in this way my income will exceed my expenditures rather than the reverse. Just as an appraiser or his apprentice holding up a scale knows, by so much it has dipped down, by so much it has gone up. If this clansman has a small income but lives luxuriously, others would say of him, this clansman eats his wealth just like an eater of figs. And if he has a large income but lives austerely, others would say of him, this clansman may even die as a pauper. But it is called balanced living when a clansman leads a balanced life. See here, Baya Ga Paja. The wealth thus righteously gained has four pathways to ruin: Apayamukha, womanizing, drunkenness, gambling, and bad friendship, bad companionship, bad comradeship, just as if there were a large reservoir with 4 inlets and 4 outlets, and a man would close the inlets and open the outlets, and sufficient rain does not fall. One could expect the water in the reservoir to decrease rather than increase. The wealth thus righteously acquired has 4 pathways to gain. One avoids womanizing, drunkenness, and gambling, and cultivates good friendship, good companionship, good comradeship, just as if there were a large reservoir with 4 inlets and 4 outlets, and a man would open the inlets and close the outlets, and sufficient rain falls. One could expect the water in the reservoir to increase rather than decrease. These are the 4 things that lead to the welfare and happiness of a clansman in this very life. There are Bhagya Paja, these 4 things that lead to the welfare and happiness of a clansman in the future. What for? Accomplishment in faith, accomplishment in virtuous behaviour, accomplishment in generosity, and accomplishment in wisdom. And what is accomplishment in faith? Here a clansman is endowed with faith. He places faith in the awakening of the Tathagata thus. The Blessed One is an Arahant, the Enlightened One, the Exalted One. This is called accomplishment in faith. And what is accomplishment in virtuous conduct? Here a clansman abstains from the destruction of life, from intoxicants, that is, spirits and alcoholic beverages, which are the basis for heedlessness. This is called accomplishment in virtuous conduct. And what is accomplishment in generosity? Here a clansman dwells at home with a heart devoid of the stain of miserliness, freely generous, open-handed, delighting in relinquishment, one devoted to charity, delighting in giving and sharing. This is called accomplished in generosity. And what is accomplishment in wisdom? Here a clansman is wise. He possesses the wisdom that discerns arising and passing away, which is noble and penetrative, and leads to the complete destruction of suffering. This is called accomplishment in wisdom. See here Bhagya Paja. These are the 4 things that lead to the welfare and happiness of a clansman in the future. Enterprising in his occupations, heedful in his management, balanced in his way of living. He safeguards the wealth he earns, endowed with faith, accomplished in virtue, charitable and devoid of miserliness. He constantly purifies the path that leads to safety in the future. Thus these 8 qualities of the faithful householder are said by the truthful one to lead to happiness in both ways, to good and welfare in this very life, and to happiness in the future. Thus for those dwelling at home, their generosity and merit increases. Although still enjoying sense pleasures, when lay people are able to engage with this enjoyment in a way that generates present benefits, and the gain of familiarity with more refined spiritual benefits, it can be expected that they will prosper and experience a reliable, harmless form of happiness. Moreover, they will help to generate lasting social well-being and prosperity.